Okay, so this evening we're at the home of Paul Eckford in Breslau, Ontario, and we're here to ask him a few questions about the upcoming election. He's a candidate for a member of the board for the CKC in the 2017 election. So, welcome, Paul, to your own home.
Thank you.
Welcoming you to your place.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate that.
Not a problem. Not a problem. First of all, Paul, we'd like you to talk to the viewers about your how you got involved in dogs and how you got involved as the current director of the CKC.
Sure. Well, I've been an animal lover my whole life, and when I was young, we raised dogs for a while, collies, and I helped with whelping the litter and looking after the dogs and obedience training them. I wish I had known at the time about junior handling, because I think I really would have enjoyed that, so that was unfortunate. But I became a scientist, so I did a couple of degrees at the University of Guelph here and really fell in love with the area. And then I moved to my current position, which is at the Hospital for Sick Children. I love the area, so I live here. I work in Toronto because it's absolutely the best place in the world for what I do. So the one drawback is that I do have a long commute, but I go on the GO train, so I use that time to read agendas and work on some of my CKC work that I can on the computer there. I started breeding Pomeranians about 8 years ago and became a CKC member. I've been involved in showing and conformation. I've been involved in the Pomeranian Club of Canada as well as the American Pomeranian Club as well. I've been on the Genetics and Medical Committee for 2 full terms now. And I suppose it was largely through that I became known to the board and to the staff. And when the previous director had to vacate the position, a call was put out for members who could fulfill the remaining 8 or 10 months of the term. And so I applied, and I was selected by the board to finish off the term until the new election. And I've been enjoying my time on the board. We've been involved in a lot of interesting issues, and there's some things that we've started, and so I'd really like to be able to see some of those things through, and that's the reason why I'm running in the election now.
Great. So I hope you'll have opportunity in some other questions to bring in what exactly it is that you do, and
Sure.
and also your education. So the first question that we have about the board is that, as you know, that a strategic plan is very important, and one of the first things the new board will do is review the old strategic plan
Absolutely.
and strike a new one. So we'd like to know what 4 or 5 things that you think are key to that new strategic plan.
Sure. Well, I'll give you my top 3, and there are many components of the 3, but the top 3. So number 1 is advocacy, and the foundation as well. So it's very important that the CKC be out there and visible more and more, both online and in communicating with stakeholders in government, so MPPs, MPs, local government officials, and really drive home that the CKC is the resource for dogs and purebred dogs and all the things that we do. So there are fringe groups out there who can very easily on social media get people in an uproar about minor little things like the fact that we use live rats in Earth Dog and the rats are not harmed at all. But fringe groups can be out there strongly advocating against us. So we need to have a strong CKC in a position to constantly advocate for the dogs and for our events and for our interests. So advocacy is very important, and the foundation goes along with that. So many people don't even know that the foundation exists or what it does. So it's not been particularly effective in the past while raising money, but what they can do is raise money and provide funding for research, say at the veterinary college here or other locations across the country to study dog-specific diseases, genetic issues, these sorts of things, and promote dogs and purebred dogs in other ways as well. So I think we really need to put some more effort into the foundation as well. The second area is providing better service to our members. So I think we have a real opportunity with the new IT system that's being developed to streamline things and to improve the member experience. And so I think that's really an area of focus that we need to have. And then the third thing is the financials. We need to make sure that the CKC stays on track, because finances were a major concern, as you know, up until very recently. We have to keep our eye on the ball there. We have to continue to work on growing the membership, growing participation in the events, and supporting the events. We have to increase registrations, and so I think those areas are our major focus, and those need to be an important component of the strategic plan.
Okay. So the next question we have is about finances.
Okay.
And specifically, the CKC as a not-for-profit organization is very concerned about operating expenses and making sure that we do stay on track. We'd like to know in this question what financial background you have that you will bring to the table.
Absolutely. So in my position, I'm a scientist. I don't do a lot of bench work anymore, but I'm a manager for a large multi-investigator program. And so my job, one of the major things is to monitor the budget, make sure that the budget is being spent how it was intended. So I'm managing about a $10 million budget right now, and we've just put in an application for another $10 million program. Hopefully we'll be successful and we can continue some of our work using those funds. So I manage those funds, as well as overseeing some of the science for the program. I work with the financial people and the accountants on a daily basis. So I do have some experience in finance. I'm not an accountant myself, but certainly I understand how they work.
Right.
So I am fairly comfortable with the financial reports that are generated at the CKC.
So Paul, before I have to twist your arm and get it out of you, you might want to tell the people what your degree is in and the kind of research you do.
Absolutely.
And that can,
so I did a PhD at the University of Guelph in biochemistry, so the study essentially of the molecules of life. And during my degree I studied a protein that so when it's overexpressed, more of it is made in cancer cells. It causes those cancer cells to be resistant to chemotherapy. And so that's one of the reasons why chemotherapy doesn't work in some cancers in some cases. And when that protein is defective in collies, for example, that's what results in collies being very drug sensitive. So people are aware that often you can't administer certain drugs to collies, and it's this protein that's the reason why. So I studied the basic details of that protein during my PhD. What I do now is I study a structurally and functionally somewhat similar protein from a related class. And this is the protein that's defective in cystic fibrosis in humans. So dogs don't suffer cystic fibrosis, fortunately, but certainly people do. And at Sick Kids, we're one of the premier places to study cystic fibrosis in the world. The gene was discovered there, and I'm quite familiar with genetics, and so that's what's helped me on the genetics and medical committee. And it's one of my interests in purebred dogs, because they certainly have unique genetics. So.
Okay, so the next part of the question, the finance question, is as you know, most of the revenue from that comes into CKC is through registrations, and there's a bit of debate about whether some income comes in from events like the dog shows and trials and things. What ideas do you have in terms of generating revenue for CKC?
Sure. Well, I don't think the answer is to drastically increase the fees that the members are paying now. There's always going to be some increase in the fees over time, cost of living and these sorts of things. Our hope is, or my hope is, to try and limit that as much as possible, because our members certainly are paying quite a lot for their memberships, for their registrations of litters, and for participation in a lot of the events. It can be quite expensive. So what we need to do is find other streams of revenue that we can tap into that aren't going to tax the member. And so I think one of the important things to do is in the area of market expansion. And so the CKC has started on this, and you'll be aware of some of the credit card offers that we have, these sorts of things where if the member takes advantage of them, there can be sort of an added value to those items for the member, but also the CKC does receive some revenue as well. So rather than going after the member to continue funding, we want to try and bring in dollars from companies. So we know that the pet industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and there's a lot of companies out there vying for the money of the pet owners. And so we need to tap into that as well. So we need to get more advertising on our website. We need to do more deals with various companies. So there have been some in the past with some of the pet food companies, for example. You'll recall that Subaru had an agreement with the CKC for a short time. So I think these are some of the areas where we can start to really expand and gain additional funds for the CKC's activities without taxing the members so much. One other area that I think is really important, and I think the AKC has done a great job of this, and it's branding merchandise for sale. So you can go into even PetSmart, for example, and you can buy AKC branded blankets and bowls and beds and these sorts of things, and I think it's a great idea. Now we would have to do it very carefully, so we don't want to associate the CKC valuable brand with poor quality items. That's absolutely certain. So they would have to be vetted and they would have to be great quality items, but there's no reason why AKC has to have the monopoly over this. We should be able to go into any pet store in Canada and buy a CKC blanket and a CKC bowl for our dogs and a CKC crate. So there should be funds in it for the CKC to really profit in some of these areas. So I think we have a lot of work to do. Absolutely.
Okay, that's great. So the final thing we want to talk about is where you see the CKC in 3 years' time. When your term is up, what contribution you've made, what legacy you've made, the things that, what's one thing that pops into your mind that you would like to see accomplished?
I'm not sure if I can limit it to one thing, but it really goes back to the three things that I brought up at the beginning. So all of those three things that I felt are important to the strategic plan are going to be yardsticks that we need to measure at the end of the 3 years. So in terms of advocacy, we need it so that when a dog issue comes up, governments are phoning the CKC because they're recognized as the premier source of information about animals. So that advocacy is important. We need to better serve our members, and so one of those yardsticks is going to be, have we increased our memberships? Are people participating more in events? Are we developing new events that really engage people? And are we doing what the members need us to do? And so a lot of those issues come back to our levels of registration and participation. So we need to get the participation up. And the third thing is that the finances need to stay in good order and have improved over those 3 years, regardless of what happens to the economy. So I'd like to see us have about 9 to 12 months worth of CKC expenses banked in a bank account. So in case there's some catastrophic event, in case there's some issue that disrupts memberships and registrations for 6 months, that the CKC can survive. We need to have that war chest there, and we need to not be dependent on month by month show results in order to keep the doors open. We need to really have that preparedness built in so that we can weather any storm.
Great. Okay, thank you very much, Paul, and I hope that people watch the video and they get out and vote. It doesn't matter so much who you vote for. Maybe you might not understand that.
No, I think no matter who you're interested in voting for, the key is to get out and vote and make sure that you vote in those referendum items as well. Very important. And
you can vote online or you can vote by mail. It's all on the CKC website. So everybody do their job and make sure that we get a good participation this time.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.